mushrooms are just about done drying. Up until now, it was horrible weather for drying mushrooms, and then just suddenly, like that, it's all nice and sunny out. But before, there was thunder and lightning and pouring rain all day, and it's not easy to dry morels in that weather. At the end of the day tomorrow, we'll weigh up our dried and see how our dry ratio is from the previous episode. And hopefully we get a few more fresh morels tomorrow as well to go along with those. Alec and Alex went to Whitehorse today, so now I'm just waiting for the guys to get back from Whitehorse. Check it out. Noodles, sauce, corn, carrots, onion, garlic, tomato, cheese. It's pretty tasty. Gotta do the dishes. So this is what I was doing most of the day. Playing the guitar and the bass guitar. We've got a little mini acoustic guitar and a miniature bass guitar with us. Most of the music on our channel is random ideas we've come up with while we're sitting in. In today's episode, we're going to be traveling to a very remote area in the central eastern Yukon wilderness. It's a wildfire that burned along the south end of Mayo Lake, which is quite a remote area. Now, we've scouted this wildfire twice, and our first look at it, it didn't look very good from the road. However, when I droned over the east side of the fire, I could see 25 little ponds surrounded by orange needle trees where the wildfire came through. We're going to be driving all the way out to the lake, and then we're going to be canoeing across part of the lake, and then we're going to try to hike into those ponds and see what they're doing. We don't know what to expect here because most of the fire doesn't look very good. The only way you can see these ponds, unless you hike 3 or 4 kilometers, is to fly with the drone and then boat. Although we've had a few good days this season, it has not been a great year for morels across the Yukon. With reports from nearby mushroom buyers that nobody is bringing in any substantial volume, it sounds like many of them might be shutting down soon. At this point, all we can do is continue to scout different fires in hopes that we will find an area that has had better weather conditions for mushrooms. Getting close now. Starting to see burn over there. Now we were here around 2 weeks ago and there was no mushrooms yet. Let's go take a look. See all the fire cups there. There's a morel right there. That's a nice stage. See if it's nice. Okay. Yeah, these are looking good. A little small, but they're not babies. They're mature. See the gills? No worms. Looks beautiful. In a lot of cases, it's less than 5 or 10% of a burn is producing really, really well. So that's our job, is to find that 5 or 10% if it exists. Sometimes it doesn't. If we do get into a patch, there should be at a pretty good stage of growth. We knew before heading here that this fire is a gamble because so much of it is either heavy muskeg or permafrost-laden hillsides. The only area of interest for us is where we mapped over a dozen small ponds. So we have to do 2 trips because of the pack boards, so they're leaving me behind so I can film them crossing. This area that we're in is pretty remote. This short canoe ride across the end of the lake saved us from walking over 3 kilometers of thick muskeg bogland to reach this side of the wildfire. Okay, we've got our canoe ratcheted and bungeed to the shore. So, it's pretty good.
I love picking morels.
Okay, so as soon as we came up the hill, we ran into 3 other pickers immediately. And they'd walked the long way. They looked pretty discouraged, and they only had maybe a quarter bucket between the 3 of them. So it's not a good sign for this burn. So what we're gonna do is go drop our pack boards at the canoe and then have one guy wait at the canoe because we don't wanna leave it there with people around. 2 of us will go in really quickly, running in with just our buckets and see what's going on by those ponds. Alex is gonna pick around the boat and the pack boards, and Alec and I are gonna run into the bush. Those pickers are following us right now. We'll see if we can lose them. When we came in, we were going in that direction, and we booted that way, and they totally followed us. And then we cut off to the left, and they kept walking the way that we went. It's not like we're hiding anything, we've never picked here. Look at the quality on that. Pretty good. Nice. That's totally good. All right, well, we think we tricked them into going away from the direction we were actually heading. So now we can just do our own thing and head towards all the ponds. This ground actually looks nice, but that doesn't mean it has morels right now. I think this fire burned late in the year, so it might have a late start. At this point, it's not looking so great. This is the south facing side of a wet pond. Decent sized trees. Burned nicely for morels, but there's not very many. We can't waste too much time here because then we won't have time for our plan B. So we gotta make a decision in the next 20 minutes whether we're gonna stick around here or we're gonna move on. Normally this would be a morel hotspot, but there's nothing here. Very random. Just when we're about to turn around, Alex spotted a gray. We're hiking back to the canoe and head to another burn about 50 kilometers further down the Silver Trail, just outside of Tino, Yukon. And we did find a few baby mushrooms there about a week ago. So it's time to go back and check again.
Looking for morels near the canoe. Look at that lake, way down there. So I'm just checking around the canoe, which is just around the corner over there. Morel, right next to the lake. You guys are gonna split those with me, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'll split this one mushroom with you. And there's a big mushroom right off the side of the road. Nice. We've come to the far end of this very small burn. We are going to just use our buckets from the truck and do a series of bucket picks until we find some good ground. Look at that. I'm gonna pick one just to show you. Morchella tomentosa. Oh, there's a few. Check them out. Absolutely perfect. Nice ones. Gotta be careful with the ash here. I don't want to step in and make it go on the mushrooms.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Let's see how they've grown. Oh, yeah, that's a lot of mushrooms. Wow. Some of these have gone bad, unfortunately. See, like this one here. It's no good. No good. So this is a spot where there's some worm contamination. So when this happens, not all the mushrooms are necessarily wormy, and if we miss any and we do pick one with worms, it becomes very obvious when we're drying them because they won't dry at the same rate as the ones that don't have worms. So we go through all of our mushrooms and grade them near the end. But I'll just show you. I'm actually going to pluck this one out of the ground. So the worms will start down in the base of the stem, which is another reason we don't pull them out of the ground usually like this. So they'll start down here, and you can see there is some in the base. And then as you come up, now I'm not really seeing any. And I don't see any holes in the stem, so I'm just going to sacrifice this mushroom to check. So there was worms in the base, but no worms inside the mushroom. So unfortunately I ruined that mushroom, but just to show you, no worms. So they start from deep in the ground and they work their way up the stems. It's another reason we don't keep the stems a lot of the time, just to be safe. Worms on wildfires and morel picking in general, some years it's not so bad and other years it's really bad. So anybody who claims that they never get worms, they either haven't been picking very long or they're not noticing them. You know, you can't control nature. The most important thing is that you try not to pick them and you grade them out when you're drying. I think I'm just going to leave the rest of these here to do their thing because it's not worth risking getting a worm. Another reason we don't want to pick worms is because we dry all of our mushrooms, and when you put a wormy mushroom into your dryer, it's like a little spore bomb. It'll just cause sporing issues all around the other mushrooms because the worms produce a humidity inside the mushroom, and the spore tubes just won't dry out and seal like a mushroom that doesn't have worms inside of it. If you get wormy mushrooms in your dryer mixed with your good mushrooms, they'll stay in that mushroom. They won't spread to the other mushrooms unless they're sitting for days and days and days, which never happens. But what will happen is that wormy mushroom will just create spore in all the surrounding mushrooms, and you really don't want that. It's not good. So it's in our best interest to not pick them to begin with because it just creates more issues down the line. But if we miss the odd one, like yesterday I was going through about 15,000 mushrooms on racks, and I pulled out maybe a dozen wormy mushrooms. So we were pretty careful. They were obvious. You can tell right away those ones have the worms. They just don't dry. They take about 3 times longer to dry. Okay, so if you don't already know, if you haven't already heard me talk about this, these early stage fire morels, which are very similar to natural morels, so they're often called naturals in the wild harvesting community in Canada here. They're also called conicas in France. It's a number of species, and they always grow first on wildfires. But there's some theories, because morels aren't very well understood. There's also the later stage morels like this one here. But look at this. This is something I've tried to talk about and I never had video proof. Here, they are coming out of the same stem base, same stipe base. Now you can see it's 2 individual stipes, but they're fused. We've seen this before, and either they're growing literally like competing mycelium and like just fusing as they grow, or it's evolved into this. And the science is not very well understood with morels, especially on wildfires when they grow so quickly and rapidly. Look at that. Morchella sextillata or septimillata growing with a Morchella tomentosa, and their stipes are fused. A rare thing to see, but it does happen. So what's really going on here? This makes it hard to tell. So we'll pick the conica first. There's another tomentosa on the other side. I didn't even see that one. This is a little smaller than I like to pick them, but I just want to show you. Yeah, they are fused. You know what? I hate to do this, but I'm going to. Let's find out for real. It's all one clod. Look at that. Fused. I'm pulling pretty hard. You can see that they grew at separate stages, but it's all from one piece.
That's cool.
If you go on mushroomexpert.com, which is an excellent website, you don't see any pictures of that because it's very hard to find this. But here it is. Let's carve away this a little bit. Let's cut it like this. Yeah, they are fused. Check this out. There was a worm. You can see the holes from it there. It wasn't in the mushroom, but it was in the base. However, the tomentosa, I've always said, are more resilient to worms. Even though it was shared, no worm. Whether that's a timing thing with the flies, I don't know. But growing out of the same stem base, and the worm chose not to go into that mushroom. These are greenies.
They are?
Yeah.
What about those?
Those are grays. Now these are another new species. Very hard to tell at this stage, but they do not have the little hairs like the tomentosa. This is another species, Morchella exuberans, and it's growing. There's another one. This is a better example of a greenie. The common name in Canada here is green or greenie, and that's because they get this sort of green olive tone to them, but they start with the silvery sheen I'm always talking about. And then over here is the tomentosa. A little different, very hard to tell on the camera, but they have a little fuzzy hairs on them that sort of disappear as they age. Now these ones will turn blonde as they age, whereas the greens will continually turn more green. Then there's conica. So all 3 types growing in one little spot here. These are generally the rarest type of fire morel, but sometimes when they flush and the conditions are right, they're the most abundant when it happens. The biggest morel harvests I've ever had in one area on a single day, and the largest that Randy has ever had has been this species. It's just not very often that it happens. Now this species gets the funkiest shapes going on. They just grow so quickly that they get these wild shapes. Just gonna thin it out. And now we can get a really good comparison here. Look at the difference between the greenie and the blondie, the gray. These are more of a honeycomb pits and ridges, whereas these are much more vertical and flatter. It's beautiful, but it's also a big mosquito breeding zone. A little bit late to this ground, but there's a nice big one. Nice blondie. These morels dry very, very nicely. Mink or something, I can't tell from here. Lunch break in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well, we came and we saw and we got about 2.5 baskets worth. Some nice mushrooms, but it's been a really bad year for wormies and we've had to be very selective. We're not willing to pick those, so it's been a real hindrance for us. So we're gonna get out of this burn, go tell Randy the news, go make some dinner, hang out in camp, and enjoy the beautiful Yukon while we still can. We did get a couple of nice grays though. Check these out. Look at that mushroom. So hopefully we see more of these. That would reinvigorate us a little bit. Three little cubs and a mama bear. Mama. Yeah, nice looking bear. 1, 2, 3, 4. Most of these were adults, but there's 40 bears we've seen so far this season. Oh, the bears are out tonight. There's another bear. He's just chomping on some flowers there. Hey, buddy. That's 40. How you doing, eh?
What you doing?
So there's our last real pick. These look pretty good now. Blondie. That gray. There's some greenies in there as well. We're gonna weigh up our dried from last episode and see how our dry ratio is. There's our pick of the day from last time. Look at the colors in there. Okay, so the first batch, 7.12. Graded, cleaned, and now stored. That's gonna be a heavier one. 8. Wait for the wind. 8.8. Oh,
One more down there.
there's a escapee.
I see it.
And these are choice Morels. We chose these out in the previous episode, if you saw that. All different colors, shapes, sizes, all really good quality. 23.4 pounds.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's get our dry ratio. 7.35 to 1.
That is, yeah, awesome.
That's after grading it and everything else. We still got 23.40 lbs dried. So considering the weather and the fact that we had to grade quite a few out, to get 7.35 to 1 is super good considering the conditions and the stage of the mushrooms. These are late stage conicas. They're like just before they start to blow out. It's the hardest stage to dry the mushrooms in. Stoked about that. All boxed up, good to go. And these beauties, pick of the day. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching today's episode. Hope you enjoyed. It was a little bit anticlimactic, not getting the volume we were hoping, but we hope you enjoyed seeing some cool areas in the Yukon. This season has been very challenging. Personally, I know it might seem like a lot of mushrooms to some people viewing this, but for us, this is the worst morel season I've personally ever had. And I don't mean in terms of the experience, I mean strictly in terms of the volume we're getting. I love being in the Yukon. It's a beautiful place. And we've had some really good nights around the campfire playing guitar and having some awesome meals. So I can't complain, life is great. But in terms of the mushrooms, we'll be lucky to break even on this, even if we sell it at a good price. So we're giving you a window into what it's like being a commercial wild harvester. This is the reality. Last year we had a great season. That was better than average. This year, a well below average season. So if you've watched the rest of the season, you see how much work we do leading up to finding mushrooms, and then to not really get into any major patches. We've done a lot of hard work and we might not make any money on it. And that's just the risk we take being wild harvesters. So all that said, we're used to this. This is part of what we do, and we're not gonna let it get us down. We're just gonna carry on, try to make the most of what's left out there. The late stage fire morels are just starting, so we'll have to see what they do. But probably over the next week, we're gonna limit our gas expenditure because we are spending over $100 a day in gas. We might as well harvest from the fire right here over the next little while. It is starting to produce a little bit more. So we'll probably be picking near home in the next episode. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time, everybody.